Right, we promised you Ruben Amorim speaking to the media following those comments, of course, about his side being the worst in the club's history. You can see him there alongside Harry Maguire taking on Rangers in the Europa League tomorrow night. Let's listen in live now.
After the Brighton game, I know that. What response have you seen from your players after what you said?
First of all, I want to talk about that. I was talking more for myself than from my players, because I was talking that, and you have to find out a coach that starts a job and lose 8 games, I think, 7 games in the first 10. So it's more for me. I was talking more about me than the players. I also talk in the same response about I was not helping my players. And if you look around, every time I speak, and I speak a lot, every time you push about the players are not good enough, I never put the spot on my players. So I understand. I gave you that headline, and I'm frustrated sometimes, and sometimes I should not say that in that terms, but it is what it is, and that's it. Sometimes it's really hard to hide the frustration in some moments. But the good thing is that I said the same things in a different way in the dressing room 5 minutes before. So the response was quite normal, because I'm really blunt with my players. And they train well, they are ready for this game, and let's see tomorrow.
And Harry, how does that land in the dressing room when you hear your manager describe the team as possibly the worst in the club's history?
No, I think as players, obviously after the game, we was really frustrated, disappointed, coming off the back of a good away performance and then beating Southampton. Going into the game, we was confident and we felt like we had the belief that we can go and beat Brighton, and ultimately we didn't perform well enough on the day. So we've got to look at ourselves. We've got to take responsibility on ourselves, and as an individual, that's what I do. I go home and think about how I can help this team improve and get back to where we want to get back to, and that's challenging a lot higher than we are in the league. So for me, it's about us players just taking responsibility on ourselves and improving individually, which will help the team improve.
Harry, you've played quite well recently. I know things haven't been going so well for the team, but the manager said last week you're a leader again. Do you feel as though it has benefited you not being the captain of the club? Because, as you said recently, your form over the past 18 months has been quite consistent.
No, I wouldn't put it down to that, to be honest. Whether I'm captain or not, I do see myself as a leader in this group of players. I'm experienced now. I've been at the club over 5 years, and I know that in times when you play for this club that there's so many ups and downs, and every game that you lose, there's a lot of scrutiny on the players, and players get targeted, and I think that's part and parcel of playing for this club. You've got to accept and take the responsibility on. And I think, look, I look at previous players, and I spoke about this before, the likes of players like Wayne Rooney and David Beckham. They had large amount of scrutiny on them, and they was world-class players. So if it can happen to them, it can happen to anybody, and it's part and parcel of playing for this club. And listen, playing for this club's a huge privilege and a huge honour, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
And just regarding that scrutiny, I mean, Joshua Zirkzee had some dreadful stick a few weeks ago, and he's played well since. Did you ever speak to him, because you've been through similar experiences at times?
No, I sent him a message privately after the game. But listen, Josh is a good player. You don't play for this club if you're not a good player. He's got to bring that belief out and that confidence out in himself. And I always say in football, there's always another game, and there's always a next opportunity. And with Josh obviously coming on against Arsenal, he really changed the game for us. And then to score that winning penalty, probably give him a lot of confidence and belief that he belongs at this club. So the fans have been brilliant with him. We have amazing fans, and they stick with us through.
Right, let's start with Manchester United then. Where else? Alejandro Garnacho and Marcus Rashford's future remain unclear with less than 2 weeks to go in this transfer window. Garnacho at the moment looks the most likely to leave, with Napoli keen on signing him. Well, our senior reporter, Melissa Reddy, has the very latest for us.
Napoli are expected to escalate their interest in Alejandro Garnacho. They've already had an initial approach knocked back by Manchester United that was just shy of £40 million. Napoli seem to believe that United would do business around the £60 million mark, but they want to compromise. And our colleagues at Sky Italy are reporting that United executives will fly to have talks with the club over their interest in Garnacho. Now, we reported on Sky Sports News yesterday that the player is not actively looking to exit United. He loves the club. He feels very passionately about them, but he has to consider his options, given he knows, and it's been put out there, that United will sell him if the price is right. I'm told that Napoli's interest is a lot more concrete than Chelsea's at the moment. They do have an appreciation of the 20-year-old, but they haven't followed that up in terms of any formal conversations with United as of yet. And United obviously would rather offload Garnacho overseas than to a rival in England. Now, this is all seemingly being driven by Antonio Conte, because Napoli have said Garnacho is a bit too pricey, so we're looking at alternative options, but Conte continues to push for him. And as a player, I think if your current situation is you not understanding where you fit into your head coach's plans, where you are suited to a system, and you have another manager and somebody with the esteem of Conte really pushing for you, that is quite an alluring prospect.
All the talk then this morning about Alejandro Garnacho. It feels like we've been talking for weeks about Marcus Rashford, but enter the fray, Garnacho. It seems interesting there, Melissa saying, look, if the price is right, Manchester United will sell him. Dave, what's the feeling amongst United fans? Because this is, an academy player. It feels like the DNA of United is kind of having these academy players and, watching them sort of go on and flourish for the club.
It's one of those weird things where you look at him as a footballer and as a talent. I think we forget he's 20 years old. You look at the statistics underlying, the data's really good. 0.6 expected goals plus expected assists per 90, the best of any United player. The talent is there. We know he scores goals, he gets assists. But the current situation, PSR, we're speaking a lot about the finances of this deal. That's the only real reason why Man United are doing that. In an ideal world, Manchester United, they were set up, moving the right way in European football. You're never going to sell a talented 20-year-old, but we're here right now. But looking at Antonio Conte, he's worked with a lot of left-wingers in his time. You think Eden Hazard in the Premier League to a really high level, Kvaratskhelia at Napoli again to a pretty high level this season. It could be a good move for Garnacho as well, but as a Manchester United fan, I wouldn't want to sell such a talented young player.
Yeah, I think it's going to be... It's interesting to see how the United fans have reacted to it, because some of them kind of understand that, they're in a position now where they have to, make money to spend money. But at the same time, a player like Garnacho, he's been one of United's brightest stars in the last few years. And yes, he's going to be inconsistent, but at the same time, he's 20.
Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's 20 years old. He's got 8 goals, 5 assists this season. And this is an off season for him. He's been a player that's played on the left, down the middle at times, on the right, and he's got that passion that, he's a player that you can get behind. And I think if they lose a player like him, it's just going to show maybe where they're heading to, and they might regret in the next few years.
Yeah. Shows you how quickly football changes, doesn't it? Because at the start of the season, I think it would have been unthinkable to think about Manchester United trying to move on Garnacho, but the emergence of Ahmad, the fact that Amorim's come in mid-season and he seems to have a bit more of a ruthless edge than perhaps Manchester United managers of the past, and he wants to reshape things, and he's got a very set militant way of playing that he's wed to and he's going to stick to. You look at that system, where does Garnacho fit in there? And I think at this point now, sacrifices for Manchester United are going to have to be made to let Amorim shape his squad, and it appears that Garnacho may be one of those sacrifices.
Marcus Rashford, this whole kind of saga is ongoing. We brought you the news yesterday that his representatives have met with Barca execs over in Lisbon. Barcelona, we understand, is his preferred destination. Just quickly go over some quotes from Deco. This is from yesterday, the Barcelona sporting director who was talking. This was before they played Benfica last night. He was asked specifically about Rashford in this situation, and he said, we are on the subject of financial fair play, arranging it. If in the end we can reinforce the team, we will try. But today there is nothing. And he also said, we have our priorities, and if we can renew the contracts of the players we have now, and if we can bring in other reinforcements, that would always be welcome. Sam, I mean, look, we've been talking about him all window. Are you surprised by this sort of latest twist, the fact that Barcelona are sort of in the picture?
No, I'm not surprised at the interest at all. You know, Marcus Rashford, on his day, is one of the best wingers in the world. And yes, similar to Garnacho, but not at the same time because he's a bit older. He is a player that we know he can perform at the top level. He's done it in the Champions League. He's done it in the Premier League. Yes, like you said, you know, Amorim's system, does it suit him? Are they looking to recoup money off of homegrown players? But again, the fact that Barcelona and Dortmund are the teams that are linked with him shows the type of player he is. And we've heard Amorim say that, you know, he wants all the players to fight for their position. They're not in a good position right now. But at the same time, he's not been in the squad since he hasn't played since the 7th of December, been in the squad once since. That's not really showing that that's a player that you want in and around the team. So I think for Marcus Rashford, he's obviously grown up in the team and he wants to, you know, perform. But at the same time, it doesn't seem that, you know, maybe that route is open for him right now.
But it feels a bit strange in a sense of Antony's been consistently on the bench and he's set to move to Real Betis on loan. So if they want to get rid of Antony and they want to get rid of Marcus Rashford and they want to get rid of Alejandro Garnacho, there's not many forwards left at Manchester United.
They'll have to bring someone in.
And that would be in a market that's very challenging in January for those types of players, because you're not going to, we saw Roman Mouche is going to go to Manchester City, their top scorer. You don't want to let that guy go, do you? And that's a big, big question mark for Manchester United. 3 attacking talents out. Who's coming in?
Yeah, a lot of clubs want forwards at the moment as well, don't they? Obviously, Sam talking there about Barcelona. They haven't sort of formally made a move for Rashford yet, but Borussia Dortmund is a club that have actually approached United to inquire about him. What's the most likely scenario, do you think? Because we're saying here we've got a couple of weeks left to go in the window. Is he going to stay a Manchester United player after all of this?
Oddly, after everything Dave just said, of the 3 players, Rashford's probably the one that they'd be most keen to get rid of. But in a weird way, I actually think he's probably the most likely to stay, because it's the most complex deal due to his salary demands, due to the clubs that are interested in him. And you look at Dortmund, you look at Barcelona, it's not necessarily a natural place for him at any of those clubs. And when you bear that in mind and you think about the kind of financial constraints that come in with bringing in a player of Marcus Rashford's calibre and a player on his wage, I think those are difficult deals for Dortmund to do and for Barcelona to do. We're always hearing about Barcelona having to pull various financial levers. I don't really know what a financial lever is, but it's something that you hear all the time with Barcelona, isn't it? So I actually think the most likely scenario is that Marcus Rashford ends up staying at Manchester United. There goes my iPad. I think that's the most likely thing that will happen. But I think Manchester United would, out of all 3 of them, probably be most happy to lose Rashford.
Agree with that in a sort of weird way?
I think in a sense you've got to look at what Marcus Rashford would want as well. I think we forget about the player and what they want in these types of situations. He's a Manchester United fan. He doesn't want to necessarily leave the club as it is. It's still an option. It's still an option to stay at Manchester United to the end of the season. We already saw under Ruben Amorim, he's played as a striker, he's played in attacking midfield and he's scored goals. We forget, obviously, the 30-goal season we all talk about. But in the Premier League, there's been 3 seasons where he's been directly involved in over 20 goals. That is a very good record for a footballer. The question marks would be, can Marcus get back up to that top level? I believe he can do. If it's at Barcelona or at Manchester United, I think they're the 2 realistic options for me. They're the 2 best options for him as a player and as a person. So they're the 2 that I see he might go for.
But let's say he stays at Manchester United, where is the position for him? Because I don't think it's centre forward, even though he played Amorim's first game there and he scored very early on in that game against Ipswich. But they don't play with wingers, they don't play with wide players, and we know Marcus Rashford wants to play wide from the left. So if he stays, I just don't see a natural fit for him at Manchester United.
But I think when you look at his profile, he's probably the best on the inside, right? So in that inside left position, yes, there's parts of his game they'd have to adapt. But also I think if he played from the start as the number 9 for Ruben Amorim, I think at this point, with all the games under the belt in the last 2 months, there's a player that can score, that can assist, that can run the channels, which is exactly what Ruben Amorim wants as a forward. So I think that's been the issue for Manchester United. This time feels like it's just been lost for the football club.
You feel like he needs a fresh start?
Potential.
Get back.
A new challenge is what it is. A new challenge.
Sticking with United for a moment, their director of football negotiations, Matt Hargreaves, has been in Milan to discuss a move for Lecce's Patrick Dorgu. Sky Italy reporting that United's current offer is £25.4 million plus £4.2 million in add-ons for the 20-year-old left-back. Under those conditions, Lecce would prefer not to sell him in this transfer window. Dave, how do we see this one ending? We know they need a left-back.
That is
one ending.
The big position United need to strengthen, and you'd look at the squad and there's no one that's left-footed that can play on that side. Patrick Dorgu's a player that's really exploded in recent years in Serie A. For Lecce, moved there, was part of their under-19s team that won the title at that level for the first time in 19 years. As a footballer, I'd describe him a bit of a dribbling wing-back, a bit like Aït-Nouri, but a bit more powerful, a bit more better on the ball in terms of like a little tight area is very, very good. So he's got these extreme attributes in a sense of he attacks very well. Defensively, there's still a little bit of work, but his versatility is very good. He's been playing on the right wing for Lecce this season, scored goals. He's a player that you don't expect to be good in the box, but finishes into the corners really well. And he's a player that I think can be moulded. And that's where Man United are at right now. They're not going to get this player that's complete. They're going to get a player that they need to work with and Amorim can coach. When you look at the wing-back profile that Amorim's worked with, the carries, the dribbles, the ability to create the final third, Patrick Dorgu's got all those attributes already. So it's building on that and turning him into a real player.
First of all, an update, Carve, on Napoli's pursuit of Manchester United's Alejandro Garnacho.
Well, look, they had a second round of talks in Italy yesterday about signing Garnacho from Manchester United. The big problem is the valuation. Napoli believe he's worth between 50 and 55 million euros. Manchester United initially were asking for 75 million euros, which is around 63 million pounds. But I think now they would accept around 65 million euros, which is around 55 million pounds. So that is the magic figure. I think a lot of United supporters will be surprised by the fact that United are willing to sell Garnacho, but I think obviously if the price is right, they are willing to do that. Obviously, we know it's got a lot to do with financial fair play, PSR considerations, and the fact that Ruben Amorim needs to sell players before he can bring players in. Other clubs are interested in Garnacho as well. For instance, Chelsea are maintaining a watching brief. That phrase has just come to me. Which basically it means, I think Chelsea's position is if a deal is there to be done, if the player wants to come to Chelsea, if United are willing to sell him and the numbers make sense for us, then it's certainly something we would look at. And of course, there have been lots of reports that his agents were pictured at Stamford Bridge on Monday night watching the game between Chelsea and Wolves. I don't think they were invited to that game by the Chelsea owners. I think they just happened to be in London and fancied watching a Premier League game.